All right, we're back. Hopefully, people can hear me now. I, you know, I'm so glad to be here. My name's Annalise. I'm the founder of Curls on the Block. I have a special guest with me, streaming, and going to offer her perspective on what we experience as educators, Black women, women who like to dance, and then what our perception of the film is compared to the outrage that has been leading up to a whole boycott of Netflix. Which, first of all, if people even knew, her name, her Instagram is Badass Boss. That's her name, and she's so like a powerhouse. She was worked for major tech companies, and she's this super amazing Black woman who just has really made some changes for Netflix. And now we all of a sudden have Girlfriends. I can't wait to binge. I've been waiting because I'm like, yo, I gotta have it on. I gotta be right. I want to be with a couple of my girlfriends, but I'm just, it's Sister, the game. I'm like, oh my gosh, everything we've wanted, right? I don't necessarily need a reboot now. I can have some new materials, but in regards to like just excitement for Netflix, really changing what, really investing in what, first of all, they're just in reinvesting. I'm just gonna get this off my chest real quick. I'm sorry, girl. It's not about Cuties yet. The shows that they just added were major money makers for the primetime TV show channels that first, brought them to life, and didn't get finales, didn't get support. We were lucky to get a more creative intro by the third season, right? So I remember they need to get, was it Parenthood? Is that it? The one? Yes. And, we can get Meteor Man. Can we get him on? I don't know. Like, we have so many options. So I'm not boycotting Netflix because they're going to get this little 16 a month. I had canceled it before, was using somebody else's. Sorry, Netflix. I mean, I was broke, but now I'm not as much. And I'm, this is one investment that I know. I love movies and I love watching film. I know the impact of art in our world, and, art replicates life, life replicates art, all those things. To get us to Cuties, okay? Let's get to the Cuties. Can you try? You're on mute, but I want you to introduce yourself and, zodiac sign, all of the whatever you want to share. I'm just kidding. But, help people know who you are and a little bit about your background. And then you can say, like, maybe one reason you're, like, willing to have this conversation with me about Cuties.
Yeah. All right. So I'm DJ. I put Marie on here because my Facebook name. So if anybody sees this, like, I'm incognito right now.
That's so I was like, girl, I'm going to let you be who you need to be.
It's just, as an educator, like, anytime I'm on, like, social media or anything like that, I always have to, like, put, like, a little alias just so I can be like, well, I hope nobody knows who I am. But yeah, so I'm an educator, obviously, Black woman. I'm 23, so I'm young, but I feel like old. Like, I feel like I have a long lived experience, whether I have or I haven't.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I want to talk about it is I like the movie, and I think as a Black girl, it was very validating. So to see, like, so many people so against it, I'm like, is that, like, am I, like, randomly having, like, flashbacks? Like, so it's been really hard to see the criticism for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I get initial, backlash of anything new and provocative. Like, that's the word. It's the Cuties marketing for the United States is was very provocative, right? And it does require us, the Black community who it's supposed to be representing, to give some feedback. I absolutely agree with that. But now we've gone into the fact that I've seen some Black women who are moms, who declare they're moms, who are saying, I'm not watching this SHIT. And I have 3 daughters. And I'm like, wow, you're actually missing out on an opportunity to talk to your daughter, because frankly, the issues that are highlighted in the first 5 minutes, you can debunk any issues that you thought you might have. I went in with my heart pumping, like nervous, because I do want to protect our girls, right? And our kids in general, because whatever's displayed on whatever gender they're portraying impacts the whole community. So I'm not going to say like, oh, this is just a girl film. No. How we portray girls impacts our young guys too, because just like Lupe Fiasco's song, and I always forget it. I'm going to figure it out in like 10 minutes. But it's like a double entendre where it's like, man, you have, this perception of what girls should be doing.
Are you talking about his song, Bitch Bad?
Yes. Thank you. Yes. And even that title, I remember that getting backlash. I was like, well, the YouTube. Like, you can watch a 5-minute music video from Lupe Fiasco. I'm like, people won't do it. You literally have everything at your hands, people. And they won't do it, Hi, Hakeem. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. So we're just talking about Cuties. If you've watched Cuties so far, would love to get, your comments on and perception for sure. Just type in the chat. If you're wanting to join the conversation, you could do that too. I have a way to add you, but let's get into it. Okay. Who says it? Let's get into it. Okay. So, it's Tammy.
Yes.
I think actually on that note, Real Housewives and Basketball Wives does worse damage than
all them mom and hip hops.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, those shows are almost are literally worse portrayals of Black women than the Cuties. Cuties, and I'm like, TVMA, let's just start with the rating. I think the rating had to be that because there are parts of the film that highlight the experiences of young girls, and has some cussing. So let's just be real. But it's a voiceover dubbed over French. And I'm like, it's so funny to watch.
Because I first starting it, I was like, does she really sound like that? Especially the other little Black girl. I was like, does she really sound like that in real life? Because this is not adding up to me.
Exactly. So it's just fake outrage. But in the first 5 minutes, I've just asked people at this point to watch the first 5 minutes because it actually highlights and I'm doing spoilers. So at this point, it doesn't even matter because people probably not even watch past 5 minutes of this. But the spoiler is, it's about a young Muslim girl, and it's literally highlighting she's with, some of the cultural traditions in the Muslim community who are individuals who practice, and the sayings that are being shared and perspective of what a woman's role is. Mm-hmm. And it's very clear she's growing up in a Muslim community that has very strict guidelines. And I was like, okay, well, this is how it's starting out. Movies can start out like this and go way left. So I knew I had to finish the film. But I was like, this is nothing like the poster. And the poster initially did do a disservice because there's probably how many dance scenes? There's like
two? Or yeah. So like two, like 2, 3, and only like one of them is like raunchy.
And raunchy off of the stage. They're
yes.
food, and because everyone says this is inappropriate. This is not what you should be doing, little girl. You're doing too much. And
I think the best part is every single time one of the kids did something extreme, there was somebody there to call them out on it. Like the scene with her cousin when he went to take her phone, he's like, "You're doing too much." The security guard when he was trying to call parents, he's like, "Y'all are doing too much." So it's I think that was the best part because it was a nice checks and balances. Every time the little girls were like, "Oh, I gotta do this." There's always an adult or someone old enough to be even there's a scene where they were flirting with 14-year-old boys. Mm-hmm. And the boys are like, "You're too young for this. Go home."
They all said it. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to share it. So I'm trying to see if I can share or watch this part, this combo, because people need to see it, in my opinion. I'm like, they need to know that someone who people, black women, first of all, let's just say who we are. Black women are saying this film is not, and I'm not even saying that bad. It's not bad. It is
I
a
agree.
beautiful display of coming of age, very similar to the book that I have incorporated in Curls on the Block, which is Coffee Will Make You Black. And so I'm like, a strong title, provocative, things that trigger people. And then the film goes through this beautiful storyline. It went through Sundance, and I'm just like, you can tell people we're surrounded by individuals who like to be upset.
Yeah, it was. It's just like I get like the outrage at the beginning, right? Because some random person was like, "It's child porn," and they're like, "Oh no!" But like now that it's been out for long enough, I think like enough people should be able. Like I'm just like on comment threads, and people like there's like people who are like, I watched it. It's something good, and people are like, "Nope, you must be a pedophile." And like they're like making like a list, like a little black book with everybody's like Facebook names,
Girl,
and you're like,
I wish somebody would tag me. I'll be like, okay, and I will share my screen so you can watch Netflix since you clearly don't have a subscription. So let me handle that first. You can't even go to the club. You can't even eat in. You can't even watch it. You don't have Netflix, so let's start there. But then when there was finally a post that I saw that showed the comparison between the U.S. marketing and the French, and I was like, France is way more sexually open than any other country. Well, not any, but a lot of European countries are very fluid and open. They have nude beaches. It's like accessible. They talk about sex. It's normalized, and I'm not saying they're advocating their 12-year-olds start becoming sexually active. I'm not saying they do that, but there is a different conversation around sexuality than there is in the United States. And it's a disconnect because we're hyper offended because somebody watched. Maybe they do have Netflix, and maybe they did watch the documentary on Netflix. I didn't watch that. Now that's something I don't need to see. Now I don't need to watch how a rich white male continue to spew harm and galvanize his cronies to harm young kids. And I didn't need to watch it. I mean, I could, but this one I'm more interested in individuals who are making art that is reflective and representing young Black girls in particular. That's just my
Yeah, I think like I was talking. So my mom, I tell her everything about how I felt, but I had a conversation with her this morning, and I was like, you know what? I wish this movie came out when I was a kid. When I was younger, my mom would play movies. Girl, we went to CC's Pizza once, and a girl, like someone had a hickey, and she's like, I'm just gonna take this as a learning opportunity. Don't come home with hickeys. And like she talked about it. So we were at pizza places.
Yeah.
And I was telling her this morning, I was like, you know what? If this movie came out when I was a kid, I would have loved to have watched it with you and have that conversation. And it's so like to see people trying to take it off of Netflix. I don't know. I felt validated. When I was a kid, we was listening to Little John, Yin Yang Twins, we were singing that, and I'm so happy that like I was living in a space where I could like listen to that, explore that, and it wasn't demonized. I think the problem right now is like everything's so taboo. And I'm like, we're not equipping our kids. Like, your kid is going to hear about sex. Your kid's going to hear about twerking. They're going to hear about that. As a parent, like, watch the movie.
Yeah.
Take some key parts. Like, you don't have to show them the whole movie. But I thought there was, like, the scene where she's at church and she's watching, like, the strippers twerk. And the very next scene, she's like, oh, we're going to do this. To me, I'm like, that's a great opportunity to be like, yeah, you're going to see these things. But that doesn't mean you have to replicate it.
Right.
My mom was always very clear. She's like, yeah, when you're grown, you can do all this. But wait until you're older and you have a better understanding of what you want before you're just like, I'm going to be an Instagram model.
Right.
So I thought it was very valuable and I felt validated. I feel like, I don't know, it made me feel like the outrage made me feel like I was like crazy or something. Because growing up, that's what we did.
Yeah.
We see a music video and we dance and we do all those. And the way people were like, oh, my kid would never, I never did this. I can't tell if it's like revisionist history Or like,
I was
I feel like I was being gaslighted. I was like,
your
y'all
kids,
never done this?
y'all don't see your kids at school. See, we don't rat them out, and see, maybe we should. See, that's the thing. But see, we don't know if you're going to support us or not, because now you can't even raise somebody. You can't even have input on your kid. You know, girl, you hit on so many things, and I got emotional. I have a text pending to my mom. It's like long. It's like, thank you so much for raising me. But well, you know, I'm serious. I was like, even if as an adult your relationship with your parent might change or transition or whatever, I have always been grateful and acknowledged. I hope my mom will believe this, but I feel like I'm always saying how my childhood I was protected, and every generation has an obligation. In my opinion, I feel like it's an obligation, but every generation has an opportunity, at least, to dismantle strongholds that are definitely surrounded in our community, especially, and well, in particular, when Black women, young Black girls, and focusing on. And you know, so she definitely broke the stronghold on a number of things that could have impacted my life in a totally different way. I danced when I was younger. I know we talked a little bit off before the live. I love dancing. Now, was I going to be top locking, dropping all like in front of my mom? Yes, in front of my mom to see if this is okay. But not like a complete twerk. But please believe, I remember in middle school a couple things. We couldn't wait till the lights went off for the dances. We called it
Yes.
okay, I'm from Illinois. We called it juking. Okay. But you know, now kids would probably be like winding or whatever. I don't know what they might call it now, but it's very similar where you're really close proximity with a young man, or actually now they got plenty of kids doing it with girls as well, and a dance partner, and it is provocative. So, you know, you're just testing out boundaries. But I feel like crazy, to your point, all this outrage, the scene where she gets like her confidence. So she has her period, and knowing her auntie, you cultural auntie, gives some input, or we're assuming her auntie talks to her a little bit about periods. We don't hear the convo, but her mom's like, "Oh, you're a woman now," and closes the door. And you're just like, "Oh, we need you, mom. We need you to get out." So we see a couple things. We saw the mom preoccupied with dad leaving. Like, come on now. At the core, the dad is the issue.
Yes.
And we can't blame moms. We got to blame the daddies because they're not here and they have a role. And even if you are not in if you're in a relationship and you have a child, there's a benefit to having multiple influencers in your children's lives. Like, let's just be real. They got to interact with men and women, cis, you know, get whatever, however identities you have. You got to learn how to interact. But mom's dealing with her issues. Daughter is seeing that. Daughter internalizes the pain of her mom, and it's just, and then it starts to it manifests in her actions because she still needs attention, and her mom is very caught up, rightfully so, because dad didn't got a whole new life.
That hurt my feelings so much because the dad was out of town. I was like, okay, that's fine. I thought it was gonna be a story where he was working. I was like, oh, she's a little sad. He's working hard, and then they was like, oh, he got a new wife. I was like, I don't know.
Too. Hey, go ahead, do you? But you see the impact, and it transcends culture and religion because it's humanity. We all want to feel accepted. We want to feel loved, and when you give love to someone, and things start shifting, whether it was the young girl or the mom and her husband, there's consequences, natural consequences to that. So we have that issue. But girl, when she gets her little period and then she's feeling herself because she's happy, oh, okay, I'm a woman now. Girl, she had the little kitty Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday panties on, right? And I barely say panties. That's like a new word for me. I would say underwear, to be honest. Yes, and Nicole wants to feel like we matter. Absolutely. We 100%. That's all kids want. And people, right? So her underwear gets exposed, and like you were mentioning, every action that young girl had there was a natural consequence. But there was also some support some other kind of way too. And I don't want to not acknowledge that, because we do have individuals and kids who we see, students we see, who end up keep pushing, but because they are not getting that reinforcement consistently, and from different people, and in a loving way as well as a strict way. You need it all. Like, that's why you really need a village. You really, really, really need a village to raise kids, to be in a relationship even with one person. People get upset. You need to be able to lean on it. And so anyway, I wanted to talk about that because I feel crazy too. I'm like, I remember getting busted having I hate saying this, but like in middle school, I couldn't wait to go to the mall. I had to scope out the stores I wanted to go to. I finally had a friend who probably be labeled as fast. Okay. And we went to Charlotte Russe. Now, Charlotte Russe had the dollar thong bin. Did you have that?
Yeah, I mean,
The
I didn't do all that, but I did. I remember being in gym and this girl was like, guess what? Guess what? And we're like, what? She's like, I got a thong. And everybody were like, oh,
deal.
where'd you? And then, of course, like all the eighth grade girls were like, I gotta go buy a thong too. This is the greatest invention ever. And then now, as an adult, I'm like, okay, that was a little silly, but
But
I totally get it.
it's a maturation process that we really have to accept, that needs boundaries, right? But man, I was actually kind of embarrassed to share that story, to be honest, because I remember hiding the underwear from my mom. I was like, I gotta clean these myself now. Like, I had to come up with every step. And I remember my mom could tell that I was getting a lot of attention when I had a little bit of a growth spurt. Girl, I've been 5 feet since 6th grade, so I'm not really tall at all. I'm not tall. But when you're 5 feet in 6th grade, you're like, oh my God, okay. But then everybody else like shoots up after you. Everybody was starting their cycle in class. It was crazy. It was her. And I think, I probably started mine earlier than I thought. But I finally came to my mom, like, embarrassed, like, this happened. And my mom's reaction was like, no, that's too soon. I was like, Mommy, I think so. And my mom knew that I was pretty advanced thinker. And anyway, she had also really, when I talk about my mom bringing me up, even if we didn't have a ton of conversations, we did have conversations about when you grow up and, what to expect, and to feel free to talk to her. I was like, okay. Yeah. But I had the book that's pretty famous. It's from American Girl, and it's like My Body. I think everybody got that. And I found out people are still sharing it, and I think it's beautiful. It's a great book to help girls transition into understanding what's happening with their bodies, and it happens so early. But anyway, I just remember buying the thong, hiding it, getting in trouble. And then the internet, I'm older, so the internet was around. But finally we had like AOL chats. You could have your own email address. Yahoo came out. Girl, I got in so much trouble because in middle school, and this is when it happens, I got in a lot of trouble because of how I was chatting with people I didn't know, and thought I had a little boyfriend. I had a little crush. I always have crushes. First of all, my friend though, I really got a crush on everybody, but like Colin Kaepernick. But I used to just have crushes based on looks. Totally right. But I remember this, had a crush on this dude, and he was like in high school. I was like, oh, and he was across the street. It was terrible. But man, I got in so much trouble. And when my mom read, she ended up finding out I had my first official kiss, and I was 13. Now, most people probably will say it happened a little earlier, whatever, but my official kiss was like, I was eighth grade, and I'm not validating that experience at all, but I was late to the game, according to all my friends. So, and then my neighbor ratted me out. My neighbor's the one who told my mom, and they think I don't know, but I know. They ratted me out. And they were like, I saw these, and I shouldn't really divulge on this, but I am, and you grow from it. In the alley, I was in on some rollerblades that I still have today, but rollerblades, and it was a first kiss, and my mom found out, and I got in a lot of trouble and couldn't be on the internet because of the chatting, and because of I was in a space that needed the guiding, right?
Yeah, that happened to me multiple times. Yes.
Look, exactly.
Man, when I was in the 8th grade, that's, because, like, we had internet, but it wasn't, like, we had one computer in the house.
Girl, me,
Man,
you can't
I
get
I
right.
spent the night at a friend's house, and she was like, "Yo, have you heard of MySpace?" And I was
Oh,
like,
man.
so I had like a MySpace and a Facebook, and it wasn't even like romantic. I was just talking to people, and
Yeah,
yeah. So like they were like, "Oh, well, you're like on the internet talking to strangers." I was
exactly.
like, "Yeah, it's MySpace. That's what you're supposed to do." My mom is like, "You don't know who these people are," and
Yeah.
we had to have like a whole like coming to Jesus meeting about like how I should not be on the internet. And I mean, I'm grateful. At the moment, I was upset. I was like, "It's not that deep." But like, I'm happy that like they had that conversation because who knows what I got into on the internet, man.
And
I
in the
just kept searching.
girl, the film addresses this too, and that's why I'm like, people are missing the mark on saying they're going to abstain from watching and boycotting, because ultimately this conversation is necessary, and parents, I think, will feel better knowing, honestly, that kids go through this, especially in this era. Like you're talking about MySpace, girl, we had AOL chat. That's how the era is different. Even that's not you said you're 23. That's barely 7 years gap, and see how fast communication styles have changed.
Yeah, it's like one of the things that I like about the movie is like this idea of like thinking about what's out there because like I am so blessed. We did not have social media
Woo.
until I was in high school because like as a kid, we didn't have Instagram, Snapchat. We didn't get that until high school.
Yeah,
I could not imagine.
yeah,
I think about my students, I teach 11-year-olds. Like, there's no way at 11 I could have an Instagram. Like,
no,
I couldn't comprehend it. Like, there is no way I would be able to. So I thought the movie, like, was really helpful, especially the scene when he tries to take her phone and she's so attached to it because she's
mm-hmm,
like, no, like, I need this. And I
mm-hmm.
feel like a lot of our kids feel this way, especially teaching virtually. Our kids are nothing at home. Like, they can't go out to the park. They can't go to the park. They can't.
Yeah,
So like it makes me wonder like what are our kids looking at? I think this is a great time to have this conversation because I'm like, your kids are just on the computer all day, parents are at work. So I know our kids are getting into like probably more. I thought Little John was wild when I was a kid,
yeah,
but like I'm pretty sure our kids are getting to even more like I don't know, my students were in class listening to WAP. So
yeah. And there's no filter. Like people want to filter Netflix, but I'm like, let me bring up some points. You want to filter this film for pedophilia, or ban, boycott it, but you won't address the person from your family. We're not even ready for those types of actual address the stuff that's actually impacting your kids, because you know what, we deal with it. We deal with your kid or
mhm.
your niece or nephew coming to school having been harmed by someone you think is safe. They don't know, girl. Okay.
Yeah, and it also like goes back to this idea of like how anytime a kid does something we deem as adult, it's sexual. And I think one of the reasons why like I was excited to watch the movie is like I'm around kids all the time. There's unless like a kid is explicitly saying I'm going to have sex, nothing kids do to me is ever sexual. I remember like in my mom's school, kids were buying Victoria's Secret panties for their girlfriends for Valentine's Day. Some of them it was sexual. Some of it was like, yeah, I'm 13, I'm grown now. But a
Mhm.
lot of it was they saw it on social media.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this is what you do. And so I'm like, the fact that people's first reaction is like, oh, this is pedophilia. And I'm like, but you have to look at it that way. For me, when I see kids twerking, it doesn't make me feel like, oh, it's sexual.
Mhm.
It's just a dance. And I think we also have to address the fact that as adults, why do we see everything as sexual? Like when kids wear crop top, like
I
kids
love
are kids. Like a kid could walk out. And it makes me feel like it's kind of sad because I feel like we're taking like the fun out of everything. You
Mhm.
know, like one of the things I was telling my mom this morning is shimmying was a big deal when I was in elementary. Now looking back, I was like, shimmying was like that was raunchy, right? But we was walking around and we was like, oh, I can shimmy now.
Mhm.
And like I couldn't imagine if my mother was like, "Oh my God, people are gonna look at you.
Right,
Don't do that." Like my mom never made me feel like I was responsible for how
right.
people reacted. And I think that's the problem that we're missing. It's like you're making these little girls responsible for
Mhm.
someone else's. Because I'm like, at the end of the day, if someone's a true pedophile, whether you're in sweatpants, whether you're twerking, they like the idea of a kid. You
Right.
know, so I'm like, we keep telling our little girls, especially little black girls, like, oh, you're fast, you're doing this, you're doing that. And I'm like, but we deserve room to grow and explore. And I think that was important in this video, in the movie,
Mhm.
because we deserve that opportunity
Yeah.
to explore. Like we should be able to twerk and be like, that's not it.
It's also cultural. Like there's a huge
Yes.
there's energy in our body, right? In general. And if a kid has displayed that they're gifted in dance, they have to get that energy out.
Mm-hmm.
And there's energy in all parts of ourselves, right? There's energy in my hair, there's energy in my hands, there's energy from my voice, the words, the things I choose to say and how I say them. And it's all about how we can guide our kids to manage that energy. And I guess I would like to definitely, I disagree 100% what you're saying, but I also want to add with like we have we're just some people are disconnected with their bodies to the extent
Mm-hmm.
that when they see other people who are connected, they reject it and they don't know how to interpret it. I'm like, I watched this past Saturday at there was a safe zone for kids at in Aurora. I was there, and lots of Candace Alien then. But there was TikTok challenges where they could win prizes. And so we all were there though, and none of us, I don't think, none of the kids did anything that was so offensive, and neither did the adults. We didn't jump in and start twerk battling or nothing. We knew that we created this space for them. We provided them music. We provided an opportunity to challenge and win a prize. I used to win prizes dancing, and that sounds hilarious right now, but it's like in middle school, there was a middle school dance battle. We have to figure out this balance of appropriate dancing. What we're saying is appropriate. I get it that there are moves that are very much connected to what people do in an intimate setting with a partner. Um, so there's no denying that, obviously, right? But there's some things that have been perceived as sexual that really is a vibration. And I did see. I was just going to highlight that I've seen some white women who are like, "I'm never going to let my kid." I'm like, okay, dance moms.
I'm not gonna lie, Dance Moms was a guilty pleasure of mine. Oh, I felt so bad for Nia, the little black girl. I kept watching and hoping one day she was gonna get a solo.
Well, we ain't even going. We're not even going to address that part now. But I'm talking like the outfits. Kids wear makeup. I've seen so many moms who put their kids in stuff. And this reminds me, when I was in gymnastics, we had to do a parade. And we're tumbling. The expectation is to be excited and all this stuff and do flips to show off what we learned from this gymnastics spot. And I was like the one of the only black girls, and eventually there was a bunch of us. There was a group of us, so I can't say a bunch, but and I actually had to wear shorts over my leotard. My mom was like, "Nope, you're not going to be, you're going to feel uncomfortable at a certain point of this parade. So wear your shorts so you feel comfortable flipping." And it was also a protection, I think, of me because it's basically a swimsuit. It's literally a swimsuit, a one piece. And that's probably why I like crops. I like bodysuits now. I'm like, I live in a bodysuit because it just compresses my body and I feel tight. I feel good in it. But, I remember those things my mom did, and the way she explained it did not make me feel like I was the problem. She just helped me see, for functionality. But there were some times where it was frustrating, where I was like, how come I can't be like Kelsey? And that's a real friend of my, growing up friend. But Kelsey and I's shape was a little different when I was growing up. I didn't have a lot, like I didn't, but I was still a little more shapely, and also had more control of and ownership of my body. So like I could move and whatever. I still like to do it. But anyway, I just had to share that because dancing is always a hot topic. It is, in my opinion, somebody's always got something to say. And we have Black girls who are majorette dancers by college. How are they going to be ready for that if they're not starting at 8?
Yeah, and I agree. And it's also like the type of dancing, right? When we talk about like cultural, like we as a society, well, white people have kind of decided what is and isn't appropriate. Because like, are you gonna tell someone that they can't whine? Like that's their culture, but when you put it in that category of like,
Yeah.
well, you can't do it, and especially when you think about like the girls who all dance at like Juneteenth and stuff.
Yeah.
Like when we tell them like, oh, that's inappropriate, it's all this, you're kind of setting them up for failure because I feel like they're learning the dance moves, they're engaged, they're energized. And then for like a bunch of like people who have no relationship to any of this,
Yeah.
to decide whether it is or isn't appropriate.
Yeah.
It's just like, just having that conversation in general with your kids. Like, I think that's it. I think people are like going above and beyond instead of just having a conversation with their child and be like, look, you can dance this way. Some people might view it like this, but as long as you're doing it for the right reasons, like, do you? But
And
no, we gonna boycott Netflix instead of just having a 5-minute conversation with our daughters
and our sons too. We're missing opportunities, and I want
yes.
because I made a post and I was just like, we're so hyper aware of what is and isn't appropriate for our young girls, and we literally are faced daily with the repercussions of not having addressed our young boys. So again, you know who that goes back to?
The dads.
Those dads. I can't. This is, and then other men, but I've seen comments where people are like, I'm only going to protect the people I know. And I'm like, see, well, and that's why other people can harm your family because you have decided you only care about your family. And other people overextending themselves to make up for that gap and stuff. And we know that there's a historical, in the United States, there's clear policies that were established to destroy the role that Black men play in the family as well as in the community. So I'm not ever going to disregard that. We know that there was intentional actions to get them out because we know they knew what the result would be. You can't raise a woman can bring up and nurture a young man. And there is a need for, other folks who identify the same as that young man.
Yeah, and I think it also like goes back to like re-envisioning what community support and like family structure. I feel like I get like people want the nuclear family, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you can't have that, but like at this point, right? If we're talking about like mass incarceration, talking about police brutality and all these, I think we should start looking at like, okay, so maybe if we don't have the man who's like in the household, but what other ways can we still give our children that without it having to be like, oh, you have to be married, you have to do this. And I think it'd be a good time to start like looking outside of the box and like, okay, like what is your role? Like, my dad, I'm always on his buckets, but he coaches, he teaches, and I'm always like, you should do this, you should do that. And he's like, why? And I'm like, but you can show up for kids outside of like, oh, well, I raised you. And I'm like, so I'm always like pushing him because I was like, yeah, you raised me, you raised my brother, like go spread that knowledge around. So I'm hoping like soon, like especially as we're having these conversations like Black Lives Matter and our kids and stuff, that we're gonna start moving forward to like some more like inclusive ways where we can like have especially Black men involved without it having to be like, oh, you have to be married or to be part of our kids' lives. I think as a community, as long as we have a group of people who are all looking out for our kids.
Yeah.
That's what's most important.
Yes, and we still must dismantle white supremacy. So I get that, but
Oh, girl, yes.
we gotta break that stuff down because some of the other points to address with we need some more films about young men exploring their manhood and that's missing. What
Yes, and I feel like we had, and I know like it's not a universal experience, but I thought Moonlight was so phenomenal.
girl, that's a hard
And like people just like saw like a piece of it and were like, nope. And I'm like, but Moonlight outside of like
yeah,
whether or not he was gay, it was just like he's being bullied, he's dealing with so much life. And I'm like, this is such a great
yeah.
story, but it also received like tons of backlash as well.
From
And I feel like it was
community. From a
mm-hmm.
large community. And it's like, man, I forgot about Moonlight, but I remember watching it. Is it the Alamo down?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was interesting, but for me, it was interesting to watch a young boy have those experiences and figure out, who he is. So, hey, if that didn't work for you, create something that is. Like, that's how I feel. That's why I did Curls in the Block, the pageant. All of these things are because I did not see or have access to create the spaces for the young girls I wanted to work with. I didn't see it. I got to create what I don't see. And, that was on my heart. That was, what was given to me. The Miss Curly pageant when I first moved into my house, I was like, this is in my head. I don't know why, but I had always like, man, I wish there was a pageant I could just wear my curls. So then I got over wanting to be in pageants, and I was like, well, why don't I create that experience for the girls? Because I learned a lot about self-esteem through pageants. And I know a lot of people, are hesitant to get their kids into pageantry, but that's again because if you're not involved enough, you face situations where you may be uncomfortable, but you have to be invested and be talking to your kid. You have to build them up and support them. But public speaking, confidence, ability to critically think. You get a question, you got to answer it, and you have to consider your audience. Come on.
Yeah, and it just goes back to that like lack of conversation because I'm like pageants, like if you frame it in a way like kids just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like just the idea that a kid can dress up and show out. Like what kid wouldn't want to do that? Like what kid would not want to put on their best fit and be like, this is me, and like show that off. But it's like parents just don't want to have that conversation. Parents don't want to put the work in. They rather just demonize it and be that's terrible, like toddlers and tiaras.
Now, there's always an extreme, right? There's always going to be an extreme. So I get that. But I'm like, okay, we'll develop the norm then that is going to work for us where we can have a safe space for these interactions and experiences. So that's what I hope to be doing and creating for sure. I want to go back to the boy thing too. We have the second iteration of power is following the son. And I'm like, we literally watched this son be a terrible person. But that was normalized. You didn't like his character. How people may not have I didn't watch this. I stopped after the first season because I just was like, I'm not going to normalize infidelity to this extent that you can do, like how the women were being treated. I just didn't like it. But we don't have really enough images of young men not having such a tumultuous experience growing up. Now, that's where art reflects life but there are young men who did not grow up with this as the norm. And we need examples of that because there are men who are trying to break their generational strongholds. And if you can't even give another example or outlet for young men, you're stuck. You're really, really stuck. But we've normalized our 14-year-old boys with guns and being all angry. They're angry because they can't even be a human. Can't even cry. Women don't want to see men cry. I'm like, I've seen a number of men cry, and I'm okay with it. I end up realizing also the power of the woman, because that's like, yo, you just undeniable. We got some power to heal, if you know what I mean. So we got opportunities to bring healing with conversation and nurturing and all that stuff. But that's missing. I think absolutely missing. But I'm going to make sure to boycott Netflix when there's another trifling movie where young boys are just terrorizing the community. I mean, even what is that? 13 Reasons Why. Now that people should have boycotted.
That was terrible. Like the book was phenomenal. The book was like a legitimate, like, this is like, because like the book will focus on snowballing
Yeah.
and how one thing just led to another. But the show is like, how do you make like someone's suicide a drama? And then how do you just like throw in random rape scenes? Like, what's the
So much
point?
drama in that should have
Like,
more people to.
yes. Oh, but all my students watch that. Like, that is
The whole.
hot button.
And I have, and then we as teachers, we got to put ourselves through trauma watching this stuff. We
got to come prepared to talk about it and be like, all right, so I watched this too. Like, what are your thoughts? And it's like, oh man, it's so much. And like, there's just, yeah, I agree. There's other, I don't know. I feel like when I was a kid, I watched Little Miss Sunshine. And I think there was like Abigail Breslin, I think it is, and she was in a pageant. I think there's just a scene where she did like a striptease and she's like, yeah. I vaguely remember it. But like with all this upset, like I remember it was a rated R movie and she was in a pageant. And then like I don't remember anybody being upset about it. Like nobody was like canceling cable because they were playing it on TV.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden,
I get we want to protect. There's just also a need for us to go beyond the first reaction. Our gut reaction cannot be the thing that leads us. I'm going to be honest, even with some of the efforts that are out there to respond to incidents that are happening in the United States, we have to start taking a breath, because I remember arguing, unfortunately, about whether or not people should be sharing the images of our murdered brothers and sisters. I was like, how is this appropriate? It's not. Well, I'm going to share it because we need to see that. No. We did not need to see that. And in fact, white people, they just needed a reminder, but the reminder doesn't do completely what we think it does. Now it has galvanized some different movement. But honestly, you know why? It's because we said we're done. We are feeling our power and we're saying nope, and people are either with us or you got to move out the way.
yeah, and then along with that, it's like it's still they had to experience police brutality. Like it wasn't until like police busted out the batons, like in Denver.
Come on, girl.
Like they went out one night and they got pepper sprayed and they was like, oh, y'all were right.
Mm-hmm.
This is real. And now all of a sudden they're like,
yeah,
oh, we can't stand for this. And then like, so you mean we had to like pepper spray you like 50 years ago to like get this moving?
Girl, well, we could go on and on because I don't want to go in that tip, but it did take films like The 13th, but what they had to be coupled with is facts. It's not just the trauma. It has to be coupled with facts. Like you have to show the history, you have to show the impact, and you have to show opportunities of where we can infiltrate. Because at the end of the day, people do become a little helpless and feel hopeless if there's no opportunity to address the issue and see a possible outcome that could repair and prepare us for a new future. Even with this film, I'll bring it back. Even with this film, like we have said, it requires parent attention. I feel like there's a lot of individuals who have an extreme perspective, and they're gonna, if they do not consider how detrimental that extreme perspective can be in the long run, if they don't couple it with communication, understanding, and opportunity for the kids to come back. Like that came up in the film as well. Like at first, the auntie was the one telling the mom, "Okay, you're stressed, girl. You got your own stuff and you're projecting." She didn't say that, but you understood that that was what the auntie was saying. And then it was mom's turn to say, "You know what? I got my daughter now. I'm good. This wedding finna happen, and this man is trifling, and I'm just gonna have to deal with it." Whatever she said, she didn't say that, but I said it. But mom realized she was so anxious with her own life. Finally, things were just calming down, and she was like, "Okay, I've accepted this as my life." Mom had outs. And so finally, in the film, the mom is the one that love that she needed, because dad still wasn't even dealing with the daughter, even though he was there. And so, when mom realized it's time, she started to become a young woman. I've got to pay more attention and tell her it's okay. You've messed up, but it's okay. You can come back. And that's something that I hope everybody can leave with, is like, it's okay. You may have gone far, but you're never too far to come back to a place where you're really comfortable. And regardless of what other people are sharing, your pictures, regardless of how terrible it is, you can come back to and create the norm and the person you need to actually be and sit in. So I was so teary though. I teared up like 3 times in the film. And the little girl, I think, I think she looks like my little sister. I'm gonna have to tell my little sister now. I'm like, she looked like little Hannah, my little sister. My little sister was not like that, however, but look at me, disclaimer. She wasn't like that. But in reality, yeah, my little sister, she looks so cute. And I just know when she was, it just grown, her experience as a young Black girl growing up in the United States in the 2000s to now. She's not even 20. So literally growing up and trying to figure out her place in the world. Shoot, as a Black woman at 31, I'm still figuring out certain parts. Girl. Anyway, I'm so grateful because I think my friends are tired of talking to me, so I had to like open it up for more.
Oh, I feel you. I get it. I've been stuck in that. It's like me and my parents in the house all for the last 6 months. They're tired of me talking to them too.
Well, girl, we can talk every Tuesday because
there we go.
Talk it up Tuesdays. Because it could have been Taco Tuesday. It might not be too late. It's only 8 Denver time. But is there anything you want to share? Like anything else that even beyond the film stuff you're going through as an educator you want to get off or need? Look,
I have like
not today. Next week.
Yeah, I think it's like I think of like the hardest part as an educator right now, I think, is like stuff like this. Like it's really hard to talk about because we're virtual.
Yeah.
Like we are reading Brown Girl Dreaming, and it's about like how she grew up during like segregation. And my kids are writing me essays about George Floyd. It has nothing to do with what we're reading, what we're talking about. So it's like I'm happy films like this are out, but it's also hard as a teacher because virtually, like, our kids are like living through these, they have these questions and they want to talk about it, but virtually you're just not having those conversations. So hopefully, like, when parents are watching these things, they can have those conversations, because it's like, especially when we go back in person, it's not happening.
Oh my God.
So hopefully parents enjoy like the next month and they can have all these wonderful life-changing conversations with them, because it's not at school.
Yeah, where it typically might have been, how many supports were in schools now or needed to be added, wraparound services, because people at home needed help. The community, it needed to be affordable and needed to be culturally accepted to get the support as well. And I'm just glad. I am glad that I was on pins and needles watching the film. I'm not gonna lie. Like I was like, please don't harm this little girl, because I wouldn't have been able to take it. I watched Harriet. Not Harriet. Sorry, I actually haven't seen Harriet, but I watched Antebellum, and I was on pins and needles watching that, and was glad I got to. I finished it. I didn't walk out. I almost did, but it was because I just have had. I'm just at a point where there's certain stuff that I don't need to continue to watch myself. So other people can, but I'm a sensitive person actually. When people get to know me, even I'm actually very sensitive. But it was some empowerment in there. It brings hope, and this film, I feel like at the end, I definitely believe it can bring some hope and shine some light on where we have to do better, but and not even better, but just where the gaps exist, or where our kids are. They're on the phone, sexting, and we need to work on this communication with them.
Yeah, and I think my favorite part is like obviously I'm grown, but I feel like it presents it in a way where I know some people are saying it's extreme, but it really wasn't extreme. Like I think the best part about the movie is it presented it in a way where kids would understand it. Like her dancing and stuff, the kids like it looked ridiculous. So I like that they did a lot of the scenes and a lot of the conversations in a way where if you were to watch it with your kid, they would get it. They'd be like, I get it.
Yeah.
Like the scene where she blows up the condom and they're like, oh yeah, you got an STD, and how she's bawling, it kind of like brings back
Yes,
that point of like,
I don't know. How was I supposed to know? Oh, thanks for reminding me. That got me. That was the first.
yes.
And
And I feel like it just brings it back to that level of innocence. And so I'm happy I watched it. I mean, I was excited to watch it. I saw little dancing videos and I thought it was adorable.
yeah,
I was like, oh, look at these little kids trying to be grown.
yeah.
And so then watching the movie was way better than what I thought. I thought it was gonna be like kind of terrible,
That's
But
not
I was
even
like, oh, this is great.
in all the dance movies that were honey, and we girl, we could talk about this maybe next week, but really when the sexualization of young Black girls does exist. Now,
Yeah.
I literally held a panel discussion with 8 experts and 100 people in the crowd watching the Push Out. Now, it's funny what people don't share. They didn't share that movie opportunity to address the stuff, but they sure shared this story. But I done got mad. I done made myself angry. I forgot what I was going to bring up, but it was just like the reality of an opportunity to see young girls really acting and vulnerable. And there's just, I didn't. We just gotta be a community around them. We really do. So, but thank you again for your time.
Oh, no problem.
And maybe next week I'll hit you up. We'll see some
Yes.
craziness in the world. I'm gonna shout out Virtual Curly Weekend. Definitely share it with your kiddos. There's free tickets available online. It is going to be similar setup to like this. There's going to be panels with Black women in STEM. I have 4 amazing doctors who are going to be talking about their different fields and engineers, as well as talk about the Crown Act. And I have a virtual scavenger hunt that folks can do by downloading the Curls and Block app. And there's going to be a paint and sip tea opportunity, so you can get tickets and have an opportunity to engage in a different way too. So curly activity kits will be available, and I'm just really excited for it. It's October 16th through the 18th, and there will be a free level opportunity to participate and paid experiences where you get stuff sent to you ahead of time. So definitely tag a kiddo and tell your 11-year-old girls and boys if they want to. There's also a virtual escape room that will be, yeah, girl, Curls on the Block has pivoted. And how could I forget? The Miss Curly pageant.
I love it.
There's contestants, it's national. There's contestants in Massachusetts, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Colorado, of course. We're finishing up some stuff in Illinois, Wisconsin, Florida, girl, Texas, girl. We for the curly, okay? So
I love it. Yeah, share it. I will share it. We have a whole STEAM department now, so I will definitely.
Let's get curly and stay curly.
Yes.
Again, I really appreciate your time, letting me talk, get animated, and test out this platform. Hope you liked it. I like being able to bring in the comments from folks who are watching on Facebook, and I thought it was really cool for them to add their opinions as well. So next time we'll get your mom on, she can watch on Facebook too.
Oh yeah, she has tons of opinions.
All right, well, have a good night.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.